The Democratic Alliance has been criticized for calling for foreign election observers from Western nations. The party is adamant that it will be beneficial for the United States and Britain to avail resources for the deployment of independent domestic election observers ahead of the elections on the 29th of May. Let's get you some analysis and reaction. Professor Sydney Mufamadi is the National Security Advisor to the President, and he joins us on this Monday afternoon. Prof, it's great to talk to you. Thanks for coming on to Daytime Update. What is your initial response to this call by the DA?
Well, Michelle, I think that just the idea of them acting in the manner they are acting does not speak well of them or of themselves. It tells us that they have a cheap estimation of our country's worth. You know, the sacrifices, immense sacrifices that were made by so many to make South Africa a democratic, sovereign state. And since we became this democracy for which so many fought for, we made provision for the establishment of many mechanisms, including your Chapter 9 institutions like the IEC, in order to ensure that whenever we have elections, we can have elections which are seen to be free and fair. These are indigenous arrangements that we have made for ourselves. Now, for anybody to think that there is nothing wrong in mortgaging our independence because they believe that there is someone sitting elsewhere, miles away from our shores, who has got a better judgment and better integrity to determine whether we have the possibility to, on our own, run a free and fair election. This is really an absurdity.
There's a quote here from the letter that was written by the DA's Emma Powell to, for example, the U.S. Secretary of State, Antony Blinken. And the quote is, "We are witnessing an increasing willingness by the ANC to forge alliances with malign international actors whose regimes are characterized by tyranny, terror and oppression. We therefore appeal to your government to recognize the high stakes for South Africa in the lead-up to and in the aftermath of the national elections in 2024. This willingness that the DA talks about by the ANC to forge alliances with regimes characterized by tyranny, terror and oppression. Professor Mufamadi, I'm sort of asking you to look into your crystal ball and wonder with the rest of us what the DA is talking about.
Well, that statement has an ominous ring of what we had in the past. You will recall that when the Nationalist Party came into power in 1948, 2 years later, it prohibited the South African Communist Party, and 12 years later, it banned the ANC and the PAC. And it fashioned itself as a bearer, so to speak, or an outpost of Western imperialism in Southern Africa. It said that we as the Nationalist Party act in the way that we do. We repress the quest for democracy because we see ourselves as a bulwark of resistance against the spread of Soviet imperialism. So clearly the DA is mortgaging our country by saying to foreign interests, we are a representative of your interests in this part of the world, please come to South Africa and do our bidding. The people of South Africa know better. For 30 years now, we have been having periodic elections which are certified as having been free and fair thanks to the ability of our competent Independent Electoral Commission to manage elections. So I am saying, therefore, that the DA needs really to wake up and smell the coffee. We live in a new South Africa. We are proud of being South Africans. We don't see ourselves as being inherently inferior to anybody who must come here and become our tutor on how to run our democratic dispensation. We can do it for ourselves.
And I suppose it will feel like a slap in the face for anyone who would have followed the US's own previous presidential election that saw 2 months later the storming of the Capitol. It saw Donald Trump contesting the results of that election. It might lead us to question what would give a country like the United States the upper hand insofar as running an election and declaring it free and fair is concerned.
Well, to start with, I must emphasize that I don't expect the US or the UK to respond positively to this invitation. It's an invitation for which there will be no takers, because they know better that South Africans are a proud people. But even as we are this proud nation, we also know our place. When the Americans were facing their own challenges, we thought we needed not to poke our noses into their internal affairs, allow them the opportunity to recover from the mess that they found themselves in at the time, the mess that you are talking about. We didn't offer to go there and help them because we don't think that we have the monopoly of wisdom. But if the DA thinks that to be a Western country means that you have a monopoly of wisdom, please, they must leverage that wisdom for purposes of running their own organization. This country is too important to be mortgaged so cheaply.
Does the DA have a point, though, Professor Mufamadi, insofar as the MK party is concerned? There have been several statements by the party, which is led by former President Jacob Zuma, to this effect. Here are some other quotes for you. We are sending a loud and clear message to the ANC that if these courts, which are sometimes captured, if they stop MK, there will be anarchy in this country. There will be no elections. South Africa will not go to the polls. Here's another quote. We are going to close South Africa for good if the MK party is not allowed to contest the elections and win a 2/3 majority. So part of what the DA's letter also talks about is that MK poses a substantive risk to the peaceful nature of our political discourse as a nation. Is there a point somewhere in those utterances from the Democratic Alliance?
Well, the point is that no one should be allowed to hold the country to ransom. That includes the so-called MK party. I'm saying no one should be allowed to hold the country to ransom. I am satisfied that the security establishment in this country has the capability to ensure that, notwithstanding the delusional intentions of whoever may be thinking that they can derail the elections, these elections will happen and they will be free and fair. But in any case, even if we were facing a threat of the kind that the DA seems to think we are facing, we are not sure. In fact, we are sure that the US and the UK are not the places to go to for a solution. We have the possibility to do it ourselves. We have the self-confidence to do so.
Professor Sidney Mufamadi is a National Security Advisor to the President. Prof, thanks very much for joining us this Monday afternoon.